Right.
What's your name?
My name's Susan Grainger, Sue Grainger to everybody. I'm a retired school teacher, and I'm now 74 years old. Right. My dad, Camtune Lee, came to England 1942, we believe. We're not 100% sure, but we have got the records of the ship that he was on when he actually came to England, and it was called the steamship Myrmidon, M-Y-R, I think it is, but I can look that up for you. He was coming from Hong Kong to England. He was a carpenter on a blue funnel, and the ship that he was on was torpedoed. He was in the water for several hours and lost a lot of his friends, and in fact he very, very seldom spoke about it at all. We knew what had happened, but he never spoke about it. But every now and again somebody would come and visit him that was still on the ships. He actually stayed. He never went back to sea, of course, but some of his friends did, and whenever they would come into Liverpool they would come to visit him, and he would be very quiet. They would talk always in Chinese away from us because we didn't speak Chinese. As children, my father decided not to teach us Chinese because he wanted us to speak perfect English. He didn't want us to speak broken English, as he called it, because he didn't speak good English. It was understandable but not good English, and he thought if we spoke Chinese as our first language we would speak like him, which of course isn't right, but that's what he believed. So it wasn't until I was about 7 or 8 years old he tried to teach us Chinese, but by then it's just ingrained in your first language. Plus my mother didn't speak Chinese either, so I think if they had spoken Chinese to each other we would have probably picked it up more, but as they didn't either, none of us spoke Chinese. So, but he came in 1942, as I say. He was picked up after his ship was torpedoed in the we're not really sure where it was. I thought it was the Atlantic, but my sister thinks it was somewhere else. But he was picked up by a British ship, we know that, and brought into Liverpool and was put in the Seamen's Mission in Liverpool to recover and to wait for a ship that would take him back to Hong Kong. His family came from Canton or Guangzhou originally, and they'd moved to Hong Kong in the 50s when he was a child. So his family he was the second eldest of 9 children, and him and his brother were blue funnel ships. They were both seamen. The rest of his family were in Hong Kong. He came to England when he met my mother. That was the important thing, because he wouldn't have stayed, I suppose. My mum was a beautiful dancer, she always was, and a lovely singer as well, actually. And she used to go ballroom dancing. Her and her sister, my auntie, would go ballroom dancing. And they went ballroom dancing one night and met some Chinese seamen, which my dad was one of them. And I suppose they say the rest is history, because my dad and my mum stayed together. My eldest sister was born in 1943. The next sister was born in 1944. And then there was a bit of a gap. I was 48 and my brother was 1950. So they settled down together. They didn't get married. They didn't get married until, let me get this right, 1947 they got married. So my 2 elder sisters were, I suppose, illegitimate, and we're not. My brother and I aren't, which we make a big thing of every now and again, but you know, that's just a joke in the family. But they settled down. My dad was very handy, very, very handy with his hands. He loved building as a carpenter, and very good with wood. And just if he saw something that needed doing, he just went out and bought the wood and the tools, and he built it. He bought the shop in Park Road, which was not far from Chinatown, of course. And they decided, because at the time there wasn't Chinese restaurants and things like that. If you were Chinese and you had a business in Liverpool or England, you were probably a laundry person, which is what he did. It wasn't what he'd done before. He had no idea about it, you know, but he set up this Chinese laundry, and it went on for probably I was born in the laundry, so, you know, I was born in 1948, so I assume they bought the laundry in about 46, or the building in about 46, and started the laundry then. And so as I say, they bought the laundry, bought all the right machinery. We had literally big ironing machines, big rinsing machines, everything, you name it, we had it. And they used to take in laundry all day, the shop would close, and then they would wash in the evening. And while the clothes were soaking, as we call it, we had big vats where we would soak the clothes. My dad would cook the dinner because we only ate Chinese food, well, 95% of the time. On a Friday evening, we would have what we called English dinner, which was a roast dinner, which my mum would cook. But apart from that, always Chinese food. And in fact, I was using chopsticks before I was using a knife and fork. We all were, because that's what you did. And we all got very proficient with them, because if you've ever eaten with any Chinese people, if you don't eat quickly, you don't get any food. You know, they do love their food. So
did you live in the laundry?
we lived above the shop. We lived above the shop because it was a 3-storey house above the. You can see it on the picture of the. The shop was on the ground floor. Our living room was on the second floor, and then the bedrooms were on the third. And the top floor was really free. It was our playroom really. That's where we played, because we weren't allowed to go out. We weren't allowed to play in the street ever. We weren't allowed to go to our friends' houses. It just wasn't allowed, you know. So we were as 4 children, although there's like 7-8 years difference between the 4 of us, we were very close. We always did everything together, you know. So which helped, and it also helped because my mum and dad really didn't have time to look after us, if you know what I mean. My eldest 2 sisters did a lot of the looking after my brother and I, because my mum and dad, once as I say, the shop would close, they would put the laundry into soak, and then they would start eating. We would eat about 9 o'clock at night was our evening meal. That was quite normal. Never even thought anything about it. We would then be sent to bed at 10 o'clock, maybe 10:30 at night we were going to bed. And my mum and dad would come to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning, having done all the washing, done all the rinsing, and hung everything up to dry in the drying room. And they would get to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd be up from school in the morning again.
Can you describe the laundry?
Well, I was young, but yeah, I mean, to us it was a play place. We never thought it's where we lived, wasn't it? You know, and we've often said, talking among ourselves, the things we did as children weren't normal, but because you do them when you're a child, it's normal, isn't it? You know, it's whatever you do as a child is your normal childhood. But as I say, the laundry, the shop part of the laundry was on the ground floor, and it was just a desk where people would bring in their laundry in the morning, and most of them wanted it back the following day. There was no, you know, it wasn't pick them up in a week's time. It was, you know, some of the businessmen would bring just collars in off their shirts, because they all had detachable collars, so that you didn't wash the shirt, they just brought a load of collars in, and they wanted them washing and ironing and starching, and they would pick them up that night. They would drop them off on their way to work, and we wanted to pick them up on the way home. So the shop stayed open till 6:30 every night to allow people to come and do that. And then, as I say, in the back on the ground floor, that was where the washing tubs were. That's where everything. They were just big wooden tubs, and we would fill them with water, warm water, and throw everything in. Everything went in there. And in fact, we used to dance on top of the clothes. We used to think it was like a paddling pool, you know. We never gave to thought we would see people's dirty laundry, but you know, that's what we did. And that would soak for a couple of hours, and then everything would be rinsed and then washed in boilers, in big copper boilers. Then it was all hung up to dry in the evening, and then ironed first thing in the morning, straight after. Once they got the kids off to school, the 4 of us off to school, it was ironing so that people could pick stuff up that day. So it was full on. So all the laundry part of the house was downstairs. It was on the ground floor. So once we went upstairs, we were home. That was where we lived. The main living room and the 3 bedrooms are all up on the first floor and second floor. So.
How do they know whose washing it was?
It was all marked. Everything had little fine pen markings on them, and in fact, the same people would bring them back, and they had the same number, the same markings, so you knew you knew the customers after a while anyway. It's the same people that used to come in all the time, so you knew whose washing it was, and that would be, everything had to be wrapped up in brown paper and put on a shelf, and they'd have their number on it as well, so they would tell you their number, and you would look for their number and give it to them. But at the time I was too young. I served a lot in the pet shop, but I was too young to help in the laundry really. My brother and I were sort of very young at the time, and my sisters helped when they could, but my dad, it was really run by my mum and dad, as I say, and which meant they were often too busy to look after us almost, you know, until we sat down for our evening meal at night time. That was it. And my mum used to say, we'd all, me in particular, because I talk a lot, she said, you just go through the whole day, because I suppose we didn't really speak to adults, so you know, I'd tell her what I'd done from when I left them in the morning to go off to school, to what we'd done every day, all through the day in school, and to what we'd done when I came home at night, sort of thing.